Good evening. We will call the meeting to order. This is the time and the place for the March 18, 2024 regular board meeting of the Marshtown Community School District. Welcome to those of you joining us here in person this evening. Welcome as well to anybody who might be watching on the live stream or watching at a later date or time. We're missing the pink sign-up sheet.
I did not.
We'll do introductions before we get going. We'll start to my left this evening. Board members here, Karina Hernandez, Maria Morales, Leah Stanley. Board members to my right, we have Zach Wall, Liz Wise, and Sarah Faltis. We've also got one of our student board reps here this evening, Daisy Covarrubias Andrade. Thank you, Randy. To my left, Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools. And returning to his seat, Mr. Randy Denham, our board secretary. And I am Sean Heitman. We've got a pink sign-up sheet there on the speaker's table for anybody who wants to address the board during public comment time. You'll be given 5 minutes to address the board. Please understand that Iowa law prohibits the discussion of specific employees of the district or their job performance. Please also be aware that in accordance with board policy, board members will not be able to respond to comments so that we can comply with open meeting laws. With those items out of the way, would you all please join me in reading the mission statement of the Marshalltown Community School District? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And please stand as you're able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are not.
Then we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Faltis Morales, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Abby, we've got some recognitions.
So you might have seen a post on Facebook a while ago about these three. So 3 of our 5th grade writers were honored at the American Legion for their What the Flag Means to Me essays. These students developed their essays through the XLP Writers Workshop Group, which integrated research with personal experiences. In February, they had the opportunity to read their winning essays to veterans. The honored students are Daniel, Yahel, and Julian, and they're here tonight to read their essays and kind of talk about their experiences. So I'll hand it off to them.
All right. So through Writers Workshop, we do this every year where we participate, 5th graders participate through the American flag, the American Legion. They do What the Flag Means to Me, and they do that. And then my 6th graders also participate in a flag essay through the Elks Lodge. Right now we are going to be celebrating our 5th graders and all of their hard work. We do this project toward the beginning of the year. I like to do this because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. We want to make sure that we keep making sure that these kids recognize what the flag means and how it can bring people together. So without further ado, let's get these people reading.
Hey, real quick, could you introduce yourself, Miss Engel?
Hi. So I'm sorry, because I'm familiar with so many of your faces, and I'm just like, hi. Hi, I'm Miss Vanessa Engel. I'm the XLP teacher here at Lenahan, as well as at the Marshalltown Learning Academy. There we go. Okay, so how about Julian, would you like to come on down here? So Julian earned 3rd place for the American Legion.
The American flag symbolizes the United States of America. But what does it mean? To me, it means liberty, justice, and freedom. I just love the balance of the colors red, white, and blue on the flag. It's perfect. On the flag, red symbolizes hardiness and bravery. White symbolizes purity and innocence, and blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. The stripes on the American flag resemble the original 13 colonies: Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. And the stars represent the 50 states. Each time America makes a state, a single star is added. Betsy Ross created a masterpiece. Betsy Ross sewed the first flag of the United States of America. She was extremely creative with her imagination when brainstorming, designing, and sewing the American flag. Betsy Ross actually showed George Washington how to cut a 5-pointed star into the American flag. In great addition, my family and I have great feelings about Independence Day. My family and I celebrate Independence Day by blowing up fireworks into the night sky. All the fireworks just look so majestical. Fun fact, the American flag has been changed 27 times over the past 270 years because more stars were added to the flag because more states were added to the United States of America. The current flag is the only one to have lasted more than 50 years. These are the reasons I think the flag of the United States is great.
Gail, go ahead and have a seat. And he is our second place winner, by the way.
What the American flag means to me. To me, the American flag means more than a piece of cloth with stars and stripes. To me, when I see the American flag, I see justice, freedom, and liberty. Also means to be the person you want to be and to do what you want to do. To me, the blue part of the flag means freedom and liberty for our country. The red part to me means bravery from our ancestors that made sacrifices and fought for the country. The white part of the flag to me represents the people and society of our country. People that better our world by donating money for people in need and cleaning the world by picking up trash. All of those colors all represent what America is. Some governors from other states in America sadly don't provide freedom to other citizens. When I think about the American history, I always think about the first flag made by Betsy Ross. To me, I love how he represented the 13 colonies by adding 13 stars and stripes to the flag. Betsy Ross created the flag in June 14, 1777. To my grandparents and my mom, when they immigrated from Mexico to America, Mexico didn't have a lot of money or things, so to them the flag symbolized new opportunities to do better and have a better, successful life and job. To my dad and my stepmom, the flag meant freedom and more opportunities to better themselves in the mindfulest way. To my uncles and aunts, the flag represented an opportunity to have a second chance in life and make it better. All my family came from Mexico and all of them didn't have a good experiences there. That's why they immigrated to America, so that's why the flag means a lot to them and me.
Nicely done. All right. And then last, we have Daniel Goslinga, who earned first place.
The American flag, also known as the Star-Spangled Banner, is a symbol of pride and unity for me. Looking at the flag, I see more than just a piece of cloth with stars and stripes. I see the beauty of our country's freedom and the sacrifices that our ancestors made to acquire it. The dark blue on the American flag reminds me of nighttime, and the stars represent the stars in the beautiful night sky. The night sky makes me feel comfortable. The dark blue part also reminds me of the year that we adopted the Betsy Ross sign. The American flag also rings a bell about the rights and freedom that our nation provides for all citizens, which is valuable to me considering that other nations' governments sadly do not provide that to their citizens. The American flag also echoes in my head about the wars that we have fought and the alliances that we have made. In the national anthem, and our flag was still there. The flag also reminds me of the rights of whatever career or whatever job legally that you can have. Speaking of jobs, most jobs are well-paying and make somebody enough money to have a good and long-lasting life. As for my family, the American flag means a lot to us because my grandpa is a veteran who fought in the Korean War. My parents love the American flag because they lead the Marine Cadets of Iowa for young Marines. Most of those young Marines join an Army field and pursue a career in the Army. So, in conclusion, the American flag means a lot to my family and I. I respect all meanings as long as they do not pose any hate to any country in the world.
Okay, so thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate doing this every year. It gives them a really great opportunity to speak to all of you and practice their public speaking. So thank you for having us.
Well, all three of you obviously did an outstanding job, and I'm just thankful that I didn't get asked to judge those speeches because they were all really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Let's go ahead and go.
Moving to the consent agenda, we've got minutes from the March 4th regular board meeting. Dr. Ryan, any items of note in personnel?
I'll go ahead and open up with one before Dr. Ryan goes. After a thorough and rigorous search that resulted in 4 finalist candidates, I'm very enthusiastic about recommending to the board the approval of the hiring of Mrs. Jackie Wyatt, whom you all know, current high school principal at Marshtown High School. Jackie's been with the district for 9 years and had previously served in a similar capacity with the Sioux City School. She's got a bachelor's degree in math from Briarcliff, a master's in educational administration from Nova Southeastern University, and an education specialist degree with superintendent's endorsement from the University of South Dakota. Jackie will be a great fit for our district admin team, given she's already built positive relationships with her principal colleagues, our directors, and supervisors, which will significantly help with the transitioning process with Dr. Ryan and after Dr. Ryan leaves. We have moved quickly, anticipating her job opening, so we've started the process already of advertising to get an early start, and as many of you are aware, we're also in the process of replacing one of our associate principals at the high school who recently was hired as the next Newton High School principal. So again, I'm really excited about this recommendation. I think Jackie would also share that she earned it. She went through the process just like everyone else, and a lot of times when you have an internal candidate, it's sometimes a higher standard, especially if you haven't technically done the job of HR, but you know, in the largest buildings in a large district, you do a lot of the functions of HR, so I'm very confident that it'll be a smooth transition.
And I just want to speak to 2 retirements, please. Julie Linz, who is a special education teacher at Miller. This is from co-principal Dave Glenn. Julie has been one of the most dedicated teachers we've had at Miller. She would routinely stay well past 4 p.m. to work with students, and her equally dedicated husband could be seen bringing dinner in for her and the students with whom she was working. She made excellent connections with students, parents, and her peers. She comes to work at every Saturday school, often bringing students with her because that is when they can meet with her. She always took changes in stride and would incorporate any new learning into her practice while maintaining strategies she had found effective over her career. Julie is one of a kind. And then Chris Richardson, a para at the high school. Chris has served as a special education paraeducator for 15 years. In addition to working one-on-one with students, Chris has recently served as a work experience assistant. Sorry, these are low on battery. In this role, she has supported students in development of workplace competency in preparation for post-secondary experiences. Chris has been a friend and mentor to many. She will be greatly missed. We wish those 2 well in their well-deserved retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, there's an agreement with Livability Marshalltown for a half-page horizontal ad, an agreement with Convergent Change Order in the amount of $2,865.90 for updates on annual cloud video storage, a license agreement between Star House Media for public exhibition of 2 Screenagers films, a convergent quote in the amount of $27,731.97 for Miller Middle School camera addition project. An agreement with Grunmeyer Leader Services for marketing of the high school principal position, and an agreement with EAB Global Inc. for the district leadership forum from June 2026 through June 2027. And then student or special education student agreements with South Tama Community School District.
The EAB agreement is actually a 3-year agreement.
Oh, yeah, I misread that. Okay. Any questions about any of those agreements? Looking at open enrollments, there are 3 out for next year. Randy, anything to note in bills?
No.
Or in the monthly financials?
No.
Any questions for Randy about the monthly financials or the bills? Then we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Who was it? Was it Sarah?
Baltus, yeah.
Okay. Baltus Hernandez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Zach's on the-
Zach.
Okay, Zach Tomish, 201 South 2nd Street. So I'm here talking to you guys as a rep from KFJB and KFJB TV. We've been covering you guys on KFJB TV for 2 years now with Bobcat Sports, but 100 years on the radio, so don't forget that. And I just wanted to come and first say thank you to just starting with Dr. Schutte and the superintendent opening up the doors, allowing us to do this. Then Ryan Isgrig and Stacy Galima with the athletic department and all the coaches. They make it really easy, whether it's, hey, talk to us after practice, coming to Bobcat Live, interviews after the game. I know sometimes it's not the most fun thing to come up and do that post-game interview, but they typically show up and do their best. So just appreciate the openness that they and ease that they make it for us, because I think the players and the families truly see the service that we're giving to the community and appreciate it. So just wanted to come and say that. Also, we went from 50 games last year to over 70 games this year. We've added more volleyball games. We added soccer, added wrestling duels this year. We're doing more baseball and softball. So I just wanted to let everybody know we are doing soccer games, and we do have some upcoming stuff that we haven't done on KFJB TV before. So our first soccer game is going to be April 2nd. It's the girls at Des Moines North. And then we'll also do the first boys game will be April 5th. So we are trying to expand, but with that, we're a team of 8 people in total that worked on KFJB TV last year. With that, one of them's the owner. We have 2 of us are on a morning show on the radio. 3 of them have other full-time jobs, and then we've got Jesse DeMeyer, who's also an MCC student. So we're all busy outside of what we're trying to do with KFJB TV, but we appreciate the want of more. We have coaches, we have parents, we have fans asking us, why aren't you doing this? Can you do that? And ultimately, it comes down to time. There's not 25 hours in a day. I really wish there was. So we appreciate the want for more. We're trying our best to add what we can and where we can fit it into our crazy calendars. One of us just also had a kid too this year. So, I mean, it's just been a lot going on, but wanted to come and say thank you for the support. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for opening your doors and allowing us to do what we do, because we absolutely love it. It's a blast, and we want to keep having fun. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, Kristen, you guys ready?
We're hoping this will be easier than a post-game interview for Brian.
We are matching. We'll talk about that later.
You bring us shirts.
Much to Brian's dismay, we are matching. Thank you guys for allowing us to come and speak with you tonight. We're always excited to share what we have going on at Miller. We're really going to focus on the relationships that we build at students and through data. We're going to spend some time. You've seen our goals and our action steps, but we just want to share a little bit more about that and then share just some things that we think are pretty cool and unique to help us connect with our students and our families. Obviously, I'm Kristen Kell, one of the co-principals.
Dave Glenn, the other co-principal.
Brian Murphy, 8th grade instructional coach.
Anna Miller, 7th grade instructional coach.
And our two counselors were supposed to be here today. Unfortunately, they both could not make it. So when we get to the counseling stuff, Dave Glenn has agreed to pitch hit there. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on tonight. So again, you've seen our goals, so we can go past that one. And then our action steps, this is kind of where we want to focus a little bit. Dave's going to chat just a little bit about our NIET Power 8 here in just a second. But if you look at our action steps under PBIS and Capturing Kids' Hearts, leverage teacher and student relationships into meaningful interventions by utilizing a relationship mapping tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then our staff being present, engaged, and visible throughout the day connects to a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about throughout our presentation and just some of the things that we've done at Miller to really hone in on those relationships that we have with our kids.
Yeah, so Kristen mentioned our Power 8. So as you all are well aware, that we as a district adopted the NIAD instructional framework, which has, I think, 19 indicators of quality instructional practices. We worked very closely with our building leadership team to kind of say, that's a lot, but what are we going to really focus on? Much like our teachers identify priority standards, we identified some priority indicators. So like, if you're going to work at Miller, these are the things that you're going to be really good at. And so those are the things that we've identified, and a lot of them tie into some of the things that we talked about here. So engaging students and managing behavior is one of them. So obviously, if you have strong relationships and solid routines and structures in place with students, that becomes a little bit easier. Academic feedback, student work, lesson structure and pacing, those are also really instructional type thing, and that ties in with grouping students, and then all of that goes to a respectful culture. And if students are engaged, if they have meaningful lessons and meaningful work that you're asking kids to do, and they're in the right spots during a class period, getting what they need, all of that ties back into a respectful culture and motivated students who are there to work and learn at high levels. So that's kind of been our focus. We wouldn't ignore the rest of the instructional framework, but those 8 things have become our priority. So this is where I'm going to do my best to channel John and Rachel in our In Control, which is really our SEL curriculum that has recently been adopted, and it has been new for this year for 7 through 12. This is a curriculum that was developed by a man named Jeff Baker, who's actually a professional school counselor. So he actually does the work day in and day out with kids, and I think most of his career was spent in middle school. So it's very attentive to student needs, it's very supportive, it's upbeat, it's current, it's a series of videos, and we do those weekly, 3 times a month in our win time, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's an opportunity for kids and their teachers to discuss current trends, difficulties, situations, just emotional type things that come up and that are very helpful. During that 4th week of every month, we will, sometimes we'll follow up with a survey about how that works. Our counselors also communicate with our families through our Family Miller Minute on this was our focus this month. If you want to continue that conversation at home to hopefully help build that collaboration between school and home, and really helping students manage some of the things that they come across on a daily basis in a middle school environment. we typically try to survey our students, and you'll see some of the data, early returns there. Our 93% of our teachers have been favorably responsive to In Control, which I would say is a big step from our last curriculum. It wouldn't have been that high. 86% of them feel like to date that it helps them be more connected with their students and having those kinds of conversations. And then we also ask our students the question a couple of times this year. We'll continue to ask them on, do my teachers care about me? And you'll see that in September it was 83% were favorable in that response. In November it was 84.5%, and then in January, or was that February? February it was 87%. So we're trending in the right direction where our kids are feeling like their teachers care about them and are connected and concerned with their success. So it's really been a positive move for us, and we hope that, we know that a stronger connection between students and their teachers generally leads towards better attendance. And so we're seeing a positive trend in that sense as well, and our attendance is sort of increasing.
Okay, one of the goals at Miller has been to utilize data to help identify students in various ways. And so one of the ways we do that is through our team meetings. And so we have 3 teams per grade level, A, B, and C, and then each team meets every 3 weeks. And we use a team protocol, Amy, if you want to click that link, to gather some data. And Brian and I put this together for every meeting. And so you can see on the data, it includes behavior, academics, attendance, and then other things like parent phone calls, other contacts home, things like that. And we're able to identify maybe some of our silent struggling students who maybe aren't a major behavior issue in the classroom, but we're seeing other issues with them. So we use that with every team every 3 weeks, and then we use that to compare the data at those meetings. And then, Amy, you can go back. And so then also in those meetings, we're fostering those positive relationships and making positive contacts home with a postcard. And then we also have WIN that Dave talked about with our In Control. So WIN is what I need, and students come to WIN in the morning, and then they have another WIN session in the afternoon. And it's a smaller group, so 16 to 20 students. And then in that time, they're with the same teacher both sessions, and so that kind of gives them that personal connection to school. That teacher really focuses on that group of kids, and they work on SEL and academic skills that they may be lacking in.
So team meetings are a little bit more at the micro level, where it's a weekly meeting. It's something, one of the things we talk a lot about are trending students, so students that are struggling right now. So that's part of the work, is identifying those students, using WIN to kind of be a targeted approach, where ideally we want that WIN teacher to be somebody they can connect to. So team meetings and WIN are kind of a little bit more focused micro level. Whereas this other tool, the relationship mapping tool, is a little bit more at the macro level. So obviously student names have been removed, but what this allows us to do, and obviously it's very small, but essentially there are 3 primary categories. So you have positive relationships, you have at-risk, and that's more behavioral, and then you have at-risk academic. And so this is something we use about quarterly, where it's not something teachers are interacting with regularly, but frequently this is, so if you see on like professional development, when we have a SEL day with a focus, we will bring this tool out and meet as a team and have teachers go through and identify, okay, do I have a positive relationship or have some specific connection I can point to with a student? And if that's the case, they check a box. And so we don't limit them on how many students they can check a box for. And then obviously you can do the same thing with concerns about their behavior, concerns about at risk. And what this allows us to do is kind of quantify some of the things that we are seeing and allow us to say, okay, of the students that have a high number of at-risk criteria that are marked right now, how does that compare with the number of positive interactions with teachers, positive connections? And so what that allows us to do is say, okay, these students are at especially high risk because they've got a lot of potential reasons for them to struggle, and they may not have that many checks on the positive relationship. which lets us know, okay, we need to add this student to the next team meeting and make sure that we're not allowing them to fall through the cracks. And so this is a tool that we've just started this year, but I think it's something that, you know, we feel very strongly about and will continue to be using in the future, because it allows us to put some numbers to kind of that, Dave often calls it cardiac data, where it feels like a student is struggling. Well, this gives us a little bit more of a numerical sense to kind of sort through and make sure we're not missing students. Because as Anna said, a lot of our students are struggling quietly, right? The ones that need help aren't always the best at advocating for themselves. This is one system we have in place to try to make sure we don't miss students and try to collect all of them in a more systematic sense, and not relying on either intuition or what we're seeing in the classroom. Because obviously, you know, teachers see 100 students throughout the day. They're not going to see everything. So this is one more system we have in place to kind of be that safety net to make sure we're identifying the needs of all students.
And with the staff match, you'll be like, why is there only a few names? So when we did the staff match, we went really like honed in, like if I asked that student who their person was, you know, we want every student at Miller to have a person, an adult that they know they can trust. So if we just said, hey, write down who you feel like you've had a connection with, this would be a lot higher, but we wanted it to be very, very specific. So like you'll see Dave on one of those lines, like that's a kid Dave was worked with day in and day out. He knows it. If we asked student A, hey, if you had an issue, who would you go to? And it would be Mr. Glenn. And so that's why you don't see as many names on that side, because that's like we are saying you are all in with this kid. And, you know, and so then we try to kind of build up that staff match, because we can have a positive relationship with a lot of kids, and that's really our goal. But to really hone in on, okay, this is the one that I'm going to save, you know, essentially is I'm going to kind of put them on that staff match. So that's why when you're looking at that, you're like, wait, why is there only just a handful of names? And this is just 7th grade as well. So just to kind of give you an indication on that.
But those are student-directed, meaning the students have identified?
I think what she's saying is that we would verify that. It's like we would have a staff member put their name next to that student, and then, you know, in conversation with that student, ask them, who would you say? And we're getting a match. So we're leaving it.
So obviously we know that in a really important part is not only the connections that we have with our students, but also the connections that we have with our parents. And we know that, you know, they are there to help support their student, and each of our parents support their children in different ways. And so we want to provide different opportunities for them to support our students. So this fall we had our first annual parent family night. We had about 150 students and parents come. There was a multitude of activities. We provided dinner, just some fun activities in some different classrooms. And so we really, for our first one, we really felt like it was really successful, and just really happy with the amount of kids and parents that came. And we'd like to do another one this spring, but just a way to get parents in the building and to do a fun activity with their kids. So it's kind of twofold. We get to connect with them in our building, but then they get to do something fun with their kids. We also had a Gear Up family night for our class of 2029. So if you don't know, we have secured the grant for Gear Up 3.0, which is for our 7th graders. We have hired Tracy Wright as our Gear Up coordinator. So she will follow this group of kids for 6 years. So she will be working with our 7th graders, and then as they go to 8th grade and as they go on to the high school. And so we had a Gear Up family night during conferences, just to really share what Gear Up was all about. We didn't have a huge number, but the ones that were there really learned a lot and got some great door prizes. So we're really proud about that. Our big connection to parents is our Family Miller Minute. It goes out at least monthly, but usually twice a month. And we put that out on Remind, and we send a message. And within that Family Miller Minute, as Dave talked about, we talk about the in control, what's going on. Hey, do you want to talk to your kids about this? We talk about what's going on in our classrooms. We do some celebrations. Each of our core groups kind of has a little corner. So we have a counselor's corner. Jody Brenneman, our business manager, has a little section. Our nurse has a section. So if she's seeing an influx of things, but it's a really great way for us to communicate with parents parents, just what's going on in our building. And we love to share the good things, but we also use that platform to share like, hey, these are some things that we've been seeing. If you could have a conversation with your kids at home, we would really appreciate that. And then obviously we have conferences in our fall and our spring. We had about 80% this spring, which is a pretty solid number for spring conferences for middle school. And so that's always a really great time to bring parents into our building and connect with them. We also, it's not on here, but on April 8th, we're having a joint PTA-PTO meeting with Lenahan, and we're going to have it at Miller. We have some Lenahan parents that really just want to see the building and ask teachers questions and meet with Dave and myself. So we're kind of really excited for that collaboration and hope that, then those parents can continue that PTO, PTA as they move to Miller and just kind of continue that trend of 4 years instead of 2 years. And so we're really excited for that April 8th date just to bring some non-Miller parents in. That would be future Miller parents. So again, we know that support is so important in any way that they can support their kids. We know that every day they send them off to school and want them to do their best. We know that doesn't always happen, but then that's where we have the adults in our building to make those connections and to really help those kids be successful at Miller and beyond.
Right. And just to kind of go along with that, and I will try to tie in our matching t-shirts. When we talk about EPIC at Miller, it's not just every EPIC, but EPIC for us stands for Every Person Impacts Culture. So that's from every employee, every student, and every parent. And how they interact with us, their kids, and the community impacts our culture at our school. And we talk about it as our own little micro community. And it gives us, it's a really good opportunity for us to talk whenever Kristen and I, or maybe you're talking to a student in the office, or when we're talking to kids in the hallway, in the lunchroom, in the classrooms. You're really talking about how are you impacting our culture. That was really awesome. That was a great impact to our culture. That was epic, But, and the same side. So along those lines, it's always a good idea to find out what our parents are feeling about that. And so we recently sent out a thought exchange survey to parents, just asking them what general satisfaction with Miller, and of those that responded, 81% said they were satisfied with their students' experience at Miller, and that 82% that thought Miller was responsive to their students' needs and what their child needs, and then they're confident that Miller can support their child's learning. That was 87%. And then the highlight for us was that we asked parents, do teachers care about your child? And that was a 97% positive response from those that responded. So, is there room to grow there? Absolutely. But the fact that all of those came in at 80% or higher was really positive for us, and affirming that we're doing the right work and we're impacting culture in a positive way collectively. So.
Do you remember how many participated or responded to that?
It wasn't significant. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount and considered total, but I think a little over 200 responses. So, questions?
Your Family Miller Minute, how is that sent out to parents?
Via Messenger and via Remind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Digital.
What was that?
Digital.
Digitally.
Yes.
Other questions from anybody?
Brian and Anna really would like to answer the question.
So on that,
They were hoping.
on that data sheet, so, that had relationships, academic at risk, general at risk. So if there's a check mark, like for general at risk, so if there's a check mark, a teacher has indicated that for them they see
Yep.
at risk.
Yep. And then there's a total, which you can't see here, but at the end we can get a grand total of our spreadsheet, and we can see like how many positive counts, how many at risk, and how many, for in general, and then academically. And so then the student can have a number, which is an indicator, a data point for us as well.
Yep.
But we really just kind of hone in on, okay, if we're really heavy in the reds and we're really low in the greens, what can we do to help build positive relationships? And then even just kind of to look, so if you just were to scan, like even the third one down, right? Like they have 6 at-risk general, 5 academic, and 1 positive relationship. So that's for us, like we're gonna look at that name, we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna,
Target that kid.
yep.
And one of the other components with that is we really try to stress to teachers that the check mark should be tied to ideally individual events and not just general perception, if possible, right? So like I was working with a student and something happened that sparked, okay, this is a student that needs extra help, and not just kind of a ballpark, like, well, that student's kind of struggling. Really try to emphasize, like tie this to something specific so that it's not just kind of what you're feeling at the time.
On the other one, the 8th grade, the data, because that's for 8th graders, what's a score on there that you would be like, oh, this kid needs attention?
So it changes throughout the year. So one of the things you'll notice is that tardies is one of the primary drivers of a lot of those numbers. So you can see some of the kids are at 9.
Right.
And those are divided by 10. So like 9.1 means 91 tardies. So obviously that would be a student that we would want to be discussing that element, and as the year goes on, obviously those numbers continue to grow. So what Ann and I do with these spreadsheets is we will sort them, and then there's another tab that we kind of sort it by team. And so we'll highlight different numbers. So early in the year, you might look at maybe like, and a lot of what we're looking at is change and not necessarily the total number. So a student that's jumping by more than 2 or 3 points is probably going to be flagged as somebody that we call a trending student. And then as the year goes on, we might increase those a little bit. As you might imagine, tardies have a tendency to start going up as the year goes on, especially as you get close to break. And that's where paying attention
Close to the high school.
Yes, exactly.
Ending your time.
Yeah, but that's where we kind of look at that trending data as opposed to just the total number, because obviously those numbers just keep growing as the year goes on.
Brian, what do you do with the data going to the high school so the kids, this data moves forward to make the staff of the high school familiar with some of these students?
So this data sheet specifically stays with us, but one of the things that has started happening this year is, so a lot of these, so for example, with some of these elements, things like tardies or significant attendance, a lot of those will be captured within Infinite Campus, which is something that will follow students as they go on. So if you look at a student's profile, it might say something like they've got a minor, they served a detention for tardies. So that's attached to their name, but it's not necessarily the totality of everything that's there. So,
yeah, I would just say additionally, and if John and Rachel were here, they'd be able to speak much more eloquently about this, but they put together a fairly extensive spreadsheet every year or data table that says, here were some of our trending kids that might be under the radar, but you need to pay attention to. Or here's a kid in Dave Glen who really needs a positive contact. He needs a go-to person at the high school, and look to establish that early, or you're going to notice early that that's not there. So a lot of those types of things, those that won't necessarily show up on a spreadsheet, we capture in another sheet and send along with them to the high school, to the counseling team over there.
And you'll notice like the PLP contacts, so that's where we track all of our contacts home. So like Anna said, we track positive contacts, so we'll do positive postcards during team, but then let's say, you call a parent and you had a concern in class, you're gonna log it in PLP, and the high school can also see that, so they can see all of our communication that we've had with parents prior, and we use that
with a brief synopsis of
right.
why.
And so that helps us too, like when we're working with a kid and we're, it's a 7th grader and we'll be like, okay, what happened at Lenahan? And we'll kind of get into the system and go, okay, they made some contacts home for this, or there was some majors or minors revolving around this. So let's reach out to them and see what they did. And so that Infinite Campus really becomes a communication piece for us. And that's why we really, encourage our teachers to really put in those contacts. So when we start having those conversations about a student, we have kind of that built up contact with the parents.
One other thing that struck me as I was looking through this, it's a very, very small number of kids that are having behavior referrals, right? I mean, if you look through the majors and the minors, it's a very small number of kids that are causing or having troubles.
Yeah. I think historically we've always hit 96, 97% of our students go through Miller with 0 or 1 major. But then you look at that 4 to 5%, 3 to 4 to 5% that have more than 1 major, and some of those are repeat.
Right, and that's the other thing too, is that as I was counting through, I counted 15 kids that had multiple major referrals.
Right.
Any other questions for us, guys? All right. Well, we thank you guys for your time. And
Thank you.
Thank you for the great information.
Yeah.
And thanks for the tour last week.
Yeah, for sure.
Anytime.
The next item relates to the school calendar and the one snow makeup day that we had. Obviously, it was a very favorable year for that. As you know, I think, or may remember from years past, our student contact hours far exceed the state minimum requirement of 1,080. So typically, it is not an issue for us when we have early outs, late starts, and a handful of snow makeup days in terms of whether we do or don't make that up. Where the challenge comes into play most often is with teacher contract days, because they're not contracted based on minimum hours or anything like that. They're still on the contract day system. So I typically try to wait till at least spring break to determine what, if anything, we need to do or to recommend related to snow makeup days, largely because more times than not, we're pretty much out of the woods with adverse weather that would impact school by spring break, although there have been times where we've had, in my career anyway, snow days after spring break or even as late as early April, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that doesn't happen. But what I'd like to recommend for this year is to excuse the one snow day makeup for both students and staff, and in doing so for staff, at least for our teachers, we would not require them to make it up. We would not deduct anything from their pay. So in essence, it's going to serve similar to like a 1 day per diem for them. On the flip side, it does, anytime we do cancel school and don't make it up, it does impact hourly employees that are working when students are in sessions. So in working with Randy, and the recommendation would be that we would pay for that 1 day per diem for our hourly employees that won't be working on that day that otherwise would. So that would be people within transportation, food service, particularly our paraprofessionals, our 10-month secretaries, maybe, I can't remember, for that. So it's nice to be able to do that. Since the last few years, we've been able to do something extra or special for them as a stipend through the ESSA dollars, which we no longer have available to do such things. So this is a way for us to also say thank you.
Questions or comments? Then we need a motion to approve students and staff not making up the last snow day and to pay staff for the day not made up as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Who? Karina, thank you. Hernandez, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Gentlemen.
So
look at that. They knew who I was talking about, too.
So the next item that's on the agenda is just to have a little bit of open discussion relative to two House bills that are still alive relative to school safety. House File 2586, which in small summation is a school safety bill that supports having an SRO grant program, essentially providing state funding for up to $50,000 to help offset the cost of implementing SROs in high schools. And then, but it also has the caveat of allowing for staff to carry guns if they have the necessary certification. And then House File 2652, another school safety bill that has also included plans for additional radios, safety reviews, firearm detection software, employee training for potential concealed carry. There's some funding to help support schools with some of these measures, and I think including purchasing equipment such as firearms for people that are deemed able to carry. So I think over most of the 8 years I've been here, in some way, shape, or form, this topic has come up. I know Chief Tupper and I have had conversations about it. Eric Whedon, both when he was juvenile court liaison as well as now our safety and security coordinator, we've had conversations about it. I've called Mr. Shomo to ask his opinion as it relates to insurability and or liability, you know, if schools like ours or anyone else goes down that road. And there's been a lot of media inquiry as it relates to this topic, I think, particularly with the timeliness of the Perry tragedy that occurred, not dissimilar to Uvalde, not dissimilar to Sandy Hook. Anytime those tragic events happen, you know, there's all kinds of ideas that get thrown out there. I will condition this by saying, and Eric would be able to affirm, we've had the highest authorities from the state who are overseeing the governor's state safety grant come multiple times to our district and applaud us for the safety efforts that we have made and committed to as a district with board approval prior to the implementation of the school safety funds. So obviously the school safety funds have put us in a position of significantly ramping up those efforts beyond what we were already doing. And obviously these two bills would in some ways enhance what we have, but in some ways create some potential challenges as well. So I had asked these three gentlemen if they were so willing to come forward and kind of speak to their beliefs as it relates to these bills.
Okay, I can go ahead and start up. Eric Whedon, Safety and Security Coordinator. There isn't an easy solution to stop random acts of violence. Majority of active threats, which are considered an incident that by its deliberate nature creates an immediate threat or imminent danger, such as an active shooter, are over in 5 minutes or less, and a majority over by the time first responders show. House File 2586, if passed into the law, would authorize school employees in the state of Iowa to be issued professional permits to carry weapons at school. This bill is contentious and controversial. So I've noted a couple of the pros here. One is only staff members willing to go through accredited and to participate in annual live training along with quarterly live firearms training provided by the Department of Public Safety would be allowed to carry weapons in a school for purposes of stopping an active threat. Having the weapon in the school also creates a harder target for the school. Because of response time by law enforcement, this individual or individuals would potentially be able to address the situation sooner than law enforcement arrives. Some of the cons include having an armed staff member responding to an active situation can create even more chaos and confusion to law enforcement when they arrive on scene. Teachers' primarily role is to teach, and that is what they are trained to do. First responders are trained to respond. Through rigorous training, first responders are better equipped to handle active situations. Our insurance carrier, which is EMC, which I believe is the insurance carrier for majority of schools in Iowa, historically hasn't supported arming teachers, creating a risk of losing EMC as our carrier and increasing our rates. Choosing who is allowed to carry can be subjective and can create division within the school amongst staff. And I've noted a couple talking points here as well. Who would be the deciding factor to who is allowed to carry a weapon on school grounds? Who purchases the weapon, the holsters, belts, etc.? And is there a stipend for the extra duty? Marshtown High School is fortunate to have a full-time armed Marshtown Police Department school resource officer equipped to handle active threat situations. Ideally, another school resource officer in the district would be most beneficial. However, I do support the hiring of vetted armed security personnel that are former retired law enforcement that are trained in these types of situations as mentioned above. This individual could train with local law enforcement at the school for better preparedness because of response time. It only makes sense to have the trained individual in our school or schools.
Go get him, Chief.
Okay. Mike Tupper, Marshtown Police Department. The first thing I want to say is that I am a proud Bobcat parent. Okay, you all are doing a great job in the school district, from the school board to Dr. Schutte to everybody that works in all the schools. My kids are thriving, they are succeeding, and they love the school district. And as parents, my wife and I are very proud of the school district and very happy with the outcome that our children are receiving. So much so, my oldest son knows that I'm getting ready to retire, and he's scared to death I'm going to find a job somewhere outside of Marshtown, and he's very worried about that. So I think you all are doing a great job. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm concerned about this legislation. And every time I talk about this, somebody will usually say I'm anti-gun. I'm not anti-gun, okay? But I've carried a firearm professionally every day of my life for the last 32 years, and I know how difficult it is. And I know how much training it requires and how much commitment it requires to safety. And I just think teachers have a lot going on in the classroom. And I think it would be very difficult for a teacher to do what is necessary to safely protect the firearm in the classroom. And I'm concerned that this legislation is an effort to find an easy or simple solution to a very complicated problem. And it's probably going to result in some safety consequences, unintended consequences that nobody's thought of and nobody really cares to talk about at this point because they're looking for an easy solution. I appreciate the partnership the police department has had with the school district for many years now, having a school resource officer at the high school. Dr. Schutte and I would love to have another school resource officer. It's a little difficult to hire police officers right now, and that's really gotten in the way of us moving forward with that process. I support Mr. Whedon's comments about hiring armed security. I think hiring armed professionals who are focused on the security of your school buildings every day and don't have other duties like teaching kids is one solution. And certainly the police department would be willing to help you maintain training and building up that program if that's something that you decided to do. So, and if you decided that you want to arm teachers, we'll do everything we can to help you with that too. I'll just tell you that professionally, I think it's a bad idea. And my oldest daughter is a 6th grade teacher in Cedar Falls, and I've had a lot of conversations with her about this. And she wants nothing to do with carrying a gun. She's been around her dad and guns her entire life. She's not afraid of guns. She just thinks it's a bad idea for a teacher to have that responsibility because there's a lot of other things going on in the classroom. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. I support what you all are doing, and I support whatever you decide. I just think you have to be very careful and think about the unintended consequences that could occur if you decide to arm teachers.
Hello, Bobby Shomo, Shomo Matson Insurance. I'm going to speak tonight as Bobby Shomo, Shomo Matson Insurance. Although I'm a fiduciary with EMC, I'm not an officer of EMC or an underwriter of EMC, and I have a good relationship with EMC. We have lots of discussions. but please understand my comments are personal comments tonight, and I can't speak for our carrier at this point. This became, and let me stop too, I want to say thank you, as Chief did, to this district. I represent 5 different school districts and have a great relationship with the MGA, Jester Insurance out of Des Moines, which puts me in knowledge of a lot of other districts. And your proactive approach to safety is certainly seen and felt across the state. And I think you're being recognized for being proactive, and I appreciate the proactive response that you're giving towards safety. It's noticed and appreciated. Also, a parent, I've had 3 kids come through the district. Sadly, they're all graduated, and I live in an empty nest now, and that's all that it's cracked up to be. So this became front of mind to the insurance industry a year ago when Spirit Lake and Cherokee moved towards arming teachers, and in some ways attempted to force the hand of EMC to provide coverage, and honestly felt that they would be able to procure coverage somewhere else if not able to convince EMC of that possibility. And if you remember following that, there had to be a punt and a pullback and a choice not to go through implementation because you couldn't find coverage. House Bill 2586 intends to provide some qualified legal immunity to resource officers as well as teachers who would legally conceal and carry. Legislators are posturing that will make it easier to secure insurance with that qualified legal immunity. I don't know that legal immunity has been defined clearly enough to let me know how contributory negligence or gross negligence is going to apply to what it might fall back on our school systems in regard to Chief Tupper's comments when somebody who is not trained professionally to address those situations makes the best call they can and their call was wrong. I don't know that EMC or the MGA, Jester Insurance, can speak yet to how that law, if passed by the Senate and signed by the governor, actually becomes law, and then it's challenged in court where liability might or might not rest following that. I think that's a significant issue. Legislators have certainly postured that given that qualified legal immunity, it might pull some insurance carriers into the mix to offer coverage. If this gets passed, my personal thoughts are it necessarily will create a conversation with EMC, the MGA, Jester Insurance, and people like me who represent local school districts in our industry. But I can't speak to what the resolution of those discussions will be with any type of certainty. There's also the possibility that I've heard legislators say that this could pull more carriers into play to offering insurance in the state of Iowa. You guys know that there's really only 2 places to go right now that are even discussable, and I find it almost laughable that our legislators think that gun control will bring more carriers in. I don't see that. Although I do see as a possibility the qualified legal immunity might pull someone in from the excess and surplus markets to possibly try to provide coverage for this specific issue. Though I don't have a firm grasp on who that might be, what type of coverage it might provide, what kind of deductible a school district might have to self-impose or to self-retain to protect themselves. But I do think the qualified legal immunity could have an impact on both EMC's response and the industry's response. But I know that response will probably be somewhat conservative for fear of not knowing how that's going to survive a legal challenge and what some type of contributory negligence might be on the shooter who is given that limited or qualified legal immunity. Thank you.
I can't remember where I heard it, but recently when having some of these discussions, I think I heard that 9% of all gun-related deaths in school are accidental. And that, if that in fact is the case, I think you have to think about the people, children, adults who unintentionally are harmed or killed in these circumstances, and to think that there should be immunity, no recourse for the family in those circumstances, I think is somewhat short-sighted, especially if the goal is to have non-professional armed people being expected to help address these issues. So,
yeah, on the topic of qualified immunity, I am not a lawyer. I'm not pretending to be a lawyer. My wife is a lawyer. She reminds me every day I'm not a lawyer. But, police officers generally have qualified immunity. And I've been a police chief for 20 years, and unfortunately I've had employees during that time use deadly force in the line of duty. We get sued every time. You're still going to have lawsuits. You're still going to have to defend those suits. And we win every time. They've always been lawful, but that doesn't mean you're not going to spend money defending a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So I do worry about the accidents. Carrying a gun is heavy. Sometimes people set it down, forget about it, leave it. Somebody picks it up. I don't think the qualified immunity is probably going to apply if somebody picks up your gun and uses it. But that'll be for lawyers to decide.
Any questions or comments from any board members? I'll say this.
Ask questions, make them really easy.
Yeah, okay. Chief, I agree with everything that you said. I'll just say that.
I agree too. Do these laws come with money? Like, do they?
I don't read anything in House File 2586 that puts any money into helping to pay for a school resource officer. There's no money allocated for that in that bill as it is currently. The other one, the 2652, there is some money that's allocated to that, but
$3 million, yeah. And I just briefly wanted to touch on that too. So House File 2652 in part reads that each school have a console or a handheld radio to be able to communicate with 911 communication center. We already have those in each and every school, and those are all other consoles. Also talks about establishing firearm detection software through a grant program. I believe there's a pilot program out there right now, or will be, but I think that's for student population 9,000 or more, so we don't quite qualify for that. And then also to create a school safety and security infrastructure standard task force, which would have standards throughout the school, throughout the state of Iowa about locks on doors and protection on your windows and products like that are out there to help to harden up those schools.
Well, and I want to thank Chief Tupper and the Marshtown Police Department, as well as the school board for, I don't know how many years ago, it was before my time, supporting the COPS grant application that kicked off the first SRO position at Marshtown High School. And I think within a month of my arrival back to Marshalltown, Chief Tupper had invited me to lunch. And probably the first or second thing out of my mouth is, how can we get a school resource officer to serve both Miller and Lenahan? And after, I don't know, a few years of urging, because it needs to be initiated generally by the police department or the city, and knowing the challenges that Chief Tupper has had most every year that I've been here in terms of having a full staff or nearly full staff, or which I don't know that you've ever had since I've been here in 8 years, I'm not sure. You know, he was willing just prior to the pandemic to make an application, which we got, and then the pandemic hit, which delayed the implementation. And as we got further into the pandemic, the city staffing issues were worse, because, you know, there had been other issues too with George Floyd and things going on. And so even despite, I know that he desperately wants to be able to be in a position of being able to partner with us, because even with that shortage, we trial run having an officer serve Miller and Lenahan, which was a positive thing that kind of turned negative, because as soon as that officer, who appeared to be a really good fit for the building, was there for 2 weeks, he had to be pulled back onto the streets because of this staffing situation. So we're all wanting the same, and hopefully things will get better. We just like the police department face challenges with staffing, so we 100% know how that is, but he's been a huge supporter of us doing what we need to do. He also paid for, or the city or police department paid for the first digital map in the state for any school building, which was Marshtown High School, which was kind of our test run preceding our adoption and purchase of digital maps for all of our buildings, which unfortunately were approved a month before the governor's grant program, and the state decided that they, even though there was money reserved for us in that they wouldn't reimburse us for, because we were proactive in that regard. So, but thank you for your continued support of our district, and I think, as Eric would attest, anytime we've had a need as it relates to support with school safety, whether it be individual situations or bigger issues, Chief Tupper's been very receptive and responsive to all of those needs and requests.
We're getting really close to being full staff, believe it or not. That might happen before I retire, but Chris Jones has been here for 27, 28 years, and if you ask him, he'll say that during that time, we've been full staff maybe 6 months. Okay, so we're always 1 or 2 short, but the challenge for us moving forward is going to be all of the property tax reform legislation and what it's doing to the city budget. And we can get a COPS grant again, but those are usually 4-year grants. They pay for 3 years, and then you have to make a commitment to covering that 4th year. And the city will have difficulty making that commitment, I think, moving forward. But I think it's still something we should discuss.
Yeah, and it was important enough to us the last time under those same circumstances that I told Chief we'd commit to paying for that 4th year if we needed to, if we could get that position in place, depending on what the circumstances, or that I would recommend to the district to cover that cost. But in a perfect world, obviously, we'd want shared cost and responsibility for it. So
you guys are doing the right thing when it comes to safety, though. I mean, it's remarkable the enhancements that have been accomplished over the last just 2 or 3 years. So Eric's doing a great job, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think focusing on physical security is a great idea, and you should continue moving forward with that.
Yeah, and we've also invested, in light of not being able to get an SRO, we've hired safety officers for both the high school and for Miller, which has further enhanced our ability to monitor and be proactive there too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have both of these bills passed the House?
I believe they both passed the House, but not the Senate. Yep.
Thank you.
You ready, Daisy? Your cohorts are playing soccer, I think.
Yeah, let me check. I shared it with you.
And so today's report, I guess, will be a bit shorter due to us barely coming back from our spring break. So not very many activities. But something we wanted to include was kind of like the results from our NHS reading in the Roundhouse, which I apologize because in my previous slides I said it was at the Orpheum, but it was actually at the Roundhouse. So we have a couple of pictures decorating beforehand and the costumes. It was a lot of fun. We had a wide amount of different variation of books that we were going to be donating and like giving the free books to the children. And then on the next slide, we have more pictures. We had a couple of games we can see up there, reading, and snacks were provided like we previously mentioned. And another thing that we actually ended up doing was a bit of karaoke towards the end. Yeah, it was really kind of adorable too. We had Let It Go and the children were singing. Yeah, I wish I had a picture, but we were just in the moment, I guess. And then our last item of the report is the Marshalltown High School band that went on their Disneyland trip this spring break. And so I've been told that it was a lot of fun. They really enjoyed it. It's a wonderful experience, and that would be it.
Thanks, Daisy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you said this, but how many kids took advantage of that, or parents?
We were surprised because that day was kind of raining, so we weren't expecting that many children or parents, but we actually had quite a handful. I don't remember the exact, but I think it was a good, successful day. Yeah.
And then Fisher had an event that day as well.
Yeah, and Hoagland did too.
Yeah, because I was planning on going to that one, but my daughter, because she goes to Fisher, she wanted to go to Fisher. I was like, okay, we'll go to Fisher.
And then it was just randomly selected a few months ago, so we weren't even expecting it to land on the same day. So what a coincidence! But overall, I think it was a good event. And then the remaining, I guess, books that were collected, we're going to be planning to donate. The majority, I think, to the public library, who helped us get a lot of the books too. So yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sure my 4-year-old would have enjoyed the karaoke. Let It Go.
Yes.
You stay up there if you'd like, and I don't know if anyone wants to join her so she isn't alone. So today marks the last day to talk about the book study, which we had chapters 9, United the World Through Music, and chapters 10, Owning One's Education. We do tentatively have Ravi scheduled to join us next board meeting for just some open conversation about our reflections of the book, and a reminder that he will be coming next fall, and in addition to, I think, giving a keynote for our staff, I think we've got him scheduled to work with our kids a good part of the time. I know he specifically wanted to work with kids that were involved in music and stuff, so we'll be working with him and the high school principal to coordinate that. But things that stuck out in either of those last two chapters for people.
I thought it was interesting. He seemed sort of critical of the idea of like career-focused education.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I was smiling is because when I was reading it, one of the chapters, I was like, wow, for once I hear someone say something positive about millennials, because I feel like society has identified me as a millennial, and it's always the negative. Every time I always hear negative things, but this time I was like, wow, finally someone's saying something positive about millennials. That's why I was kind of giggling at the beginning when Dr. Shitty, or when someone asked, what kind of struck us when we were reading this, and that's what I was thinking about. I mean, there was other great things, of course, but I just wanted to point that out.
But I agree with you. I thought it was unique that
kind of tone change. It was like uplift them, empower them, help them. You know, don't be in their way. So that was a little bit different message than what we'd been seeing.
I think something that kind of struck me, it was kind of towards the end, was the phrase that he mentions that it is better to aim high and miss than to aim low and achieve. And I think that was just a wonderful capture of like how sometimes we have to, rather than, I guess, staying in the comfort zone or like to achieve higher, to work higher, to be that best version of ourselves. And really those are the moments that create the most impact, which I think was just a really nice capture of the whole book. I think it's just the emphasis of that message.
I agree.
Yeah, there were a number of things, including some of those that were mentioned, that struck me. I liked how he talked about the critical importance of the collaboration between parents and the school and the child, and then kind of mapped out the whole transition from interdependence to dependence as kids move through the system. And he obviously is a huge proponent of the arts, and so I kind of felt like whether it be work-based experiences or just experiences in general, he was speaking about how important like things like field trips are, or taking advantage of like one of the nicest museums in the country, which is right here, you know, the Art Museum in Marshalltown, and things that, you know, providing a large variety of exposure for kids so that they can be imaginative essentially, or curious, and dig deeper to truly figure out what they're passionate about and that sort of thing. And I kept, especially in the last chapter, going back to the investigating we've been doing with the 3DE at the high school. And I've always been a huge proponent of project-based or problem-based type of learning, making learning relevant to kids today. So that they understand the why behind knowing certain things. And, a big part of that is learning through failure too. But then, we develop and are expected to have grading systems that don't necessarily lend themselves a lot of times, or we have mindsets that sometimes, because of grade point averages or class ranks or what have, college admissions or what have, kind of discourage sometimes people stepping outside of the box and taking risks or taking chances in lieu of maybe not getting that A or that A plus or whatever. So I found that really interesting. And again, this is, and I think he self admits, his philosophy and his positions are developed through his life experience. And he talks a lot about work-based learning experiences that he had growing up, so that's what was so odd about. I don't know, it kind of felt like it fed into the, if kids do something other than what would be considered maybe professional jobs, that it's something less than, which, obviously we don't want that kind of mindset. But what I've seen in Marshalltown, especially in the advanced manufacturing realm, is that regardless of the level of someone's education, if they have the knowledge and skills to get hired at an entry level, and they live up to the expectations, generally there's opportunities to learn and grow and to transition, social mobility or whatever, through positions within those organizations as well, or they position themselves to where there's oftentimes other opportunities within town that would lend itself to their skills too.
I liked how he said you have to learn how to talk to strangers. And so with our business, it's very, that's one thing that we do have to teach, is how to teach the kids to actually have conversations, look people in the eye, smile with your voice,
those type of things. So I liked how he mentioned that in the book because it's important for our business. It's important just in general to be able to talk to people.
And I think in most of the studies that have been done, across the state with businesses or within the community, when we talk to people about what is it that you need, 7 of those 10 things that'll be mentioned are all what you're talking about within just the professional skills, soft skills, communication skills, and that sort of thing. But I do think that that'd be an interesting question to dig deeper with him about his position as far as career-based learning and that sort of thing.
So I kind of wonder, that statement in there was more about Europe and the way that Europe's education is set up, and you basically test into a track. Mm-hmm. So you don't necessarily have the flexibility to change throughout your educational journey like you do here. So that would be good to, if you would want to ask that question, but that's my guess from reading the book, because he's also talking about, I was thinking, in chapter 10, he's talking a lot about find that spark, that passion, build around your strengths, take those things that you are naturally good at, build them into strengths, use those as you go through your life and continue to build on them to be more successful. And he's also talking about you have to build your own education path. And these are all things we talk about in a business environment. You have to own your own career path. You have to advocate for what you want. You should be building on your strengths unless you have a weakness that is limiting you from being able to move forward, right? Those are the things that you focus on from a career standpoint as well. So I think, to me, I'm okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is what we do every day. And that, I get that. But the other piece of that, even in a business environment, is people say, well, I don't know what all is out there. So don't tell me you own your own career. You have to help me understand what are those different opportunities and what do they mean and how does it connect with what I already know. And to me, it's the teachers have to build those bridges for the students, just like managers have to build those bridges for their employees. So that was what I thought about when I read it.
And even this morning when I attended a different meeting, a lot of it was I was remembering the book because we were talking about, okay, what different careers are available for students and how are students known? What do we need to do to be able to make sure that all those students know those opportunities? I was sharing an example that when I was doing a mock interviews at the high school, all the students that said that they wanted to be a nurse, I talked to them about, hey, are you in CNA? Are you taking that in high school? And none of them said that they knew about it. And it's okay, what do we need to do differently to be able to let them know about these opportunities? Because I'm sure, in some shape or form, one of their teachers or counselors let them know, but it didn't struck to them maybe. And so we were thinking about different things, to think outside the box. Okay, there's many things that we hear, industry-wise, and certain students might say, well, I think I know what that means, but in reality, they don't. Or they don't even know that they were interested in a certain career. I was in the meeting with Kristen, and she was talking about how they have their, I think it was during WIN, sometimes they have an ag class that they go to the high school. It's once a year. The high school goes to Miller, and then Miller goes to high school in one of those classes. And some of those students in those classes learned that they were interested in ag, but they wouldn't have known if it wasn't for that WIN class. Or I think she said it was a WIN class. So it wasn't a class that the student chose to be into ag. They had to take that class regardless, but that's the only reason why they found out that they were interested in that industry was because that class was required, and they learned about another industry that they didn't know about. And so a lot of it was similar to what we were reading. I was like, okay, it's all connecting the dots together. That's good. That means that we're
Well,
being
and that
proactive.
envelope that you had at your seats is
CNA?
actually an open house for the CNA program for the board to go visit, so.
So our discussion table had different ideas about how we can help students learn more about those industries or CTE classes and not something different. I know right now, the teachers do a great job in talking about those careers, but we also talked about maybe the counselors being able to be more aware, more in depth of what those classes are, because maybe sometimes the counselors need to know a little bit more about what those entail. So I thought a lot of it matched from what we had read before in the book.
Anything else? Okay.
Matt, did you have anything further? Just because I missed you this morning, I wanted to make sure I did.
I will say, as I was reading through, the leadership strands really stand out to me. Those are the things I connect with. And so anytime I read, and when I was going through schooling to become an administrator, we talked about servant leadership, trying to find those who don't have the skills and build them up so they can surpass you. And I think there's a lot of themes of that in here, trying to find even the commonalities amongst generations, like how can you help the people achieve their goals even though there's differences in our understanding.
Thanks, everybody. Rex, come tell us about these vehicles you want us to buy.
Well, thank you. Once again, we're here looking at what the district needs. I've rolled over and started working on the 24-25 school year, and busing wise, as well as what our vehicles. We bought a 12-passenger van, and that's been very popular. And a lot of the groups have suggested getting another one because the one is gone all the time, plus the Suburban's gone a lot. Then our smaller vehicles, the 7-passenger, you go by there most days, they're all gone. Either to out of town getting kids or running around town transporting kids all over. We do not want to trade any vehicles in. So what we're asking for is to go with another 12-passenger van, because with the two 12-passenger vans, that's 24 people, and that can house a lot of times some of the teams want to go to a street someplace, or legal leagues or whatever, want to move around. And then 7-passenger, the one is racking up miles. Our small vehicles that go to Waterloo and Cedar Falls every day put 300 and some miles on about 325 miles every day. So it doesn't take long for them to get up to 90,000 miles in 2 years. So we try to keep those moving through. And then with our small vehicles, we also do our moving our high school kids around to their career for them to do career advancement, get out in job shadow or skill build. So we got vehicles moving all day long. So I'm asking, the department is asking that you approve the 12-passenger and the 7-passenger one from Jensen Ford, because the 12-passenger has to be used by state law. It cannot be new, it has to be used. So what Jensen Ford has done for us, they bought it, they're using it as a rental vehicle right now, and then they're in a position to sell it to us and have under 10,000 miles for us when we get it. And of course, 7-passenger would be a brand new van for us. So that is what we're asking for. Quick update for you, our 2 buses that we placed order for a year ago are not here yet. They're telling me now April, possibly May, we may get those. Food truck ordered a year ago is not done. Right now they told me that possibly April, maybe first part of May. So these vehicles, they are on the lots and they are able to be available July 1, when Randy and I talked about when we would be able to get those.
just for clarification, the 12 passenger would be through Jensen, and then the 7 passenger Carl Auto Group? Okay.
I'd forgotten about that. You can't buy a new 12 passenger van. I forgot about that. That's quite a law.
Yeah, you know, and no one seems to know why the legislation passed that way, but that's what it passed.
Other questions for Rex? And this comes out of PEPAL funds, right, Rex? Correct. We need a motion to approve the purchase of a 7-passenger 2024 Pacifica from Carl Auto Group in the amount of $41,085 and a 12-passenger T350 Transit van from Jensen Ford in the amount of $63,645 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Faultus Stanley. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rex.
Okay, yeah, just pulling it up there. So, before you tonight, I am asking for formal board action to set the first of 2 public hearings for the 24-25 certified budget. This first public hearing, if you recall from prior presentations, will be to hold a public hearing, allow patrons to come in and discuss the proposed property tax statements, which will be mailed out by the county auditor sometime this week. They have till Wednesday to get those mailed out. So asking to set that public hearing for April 1st.
Are there any questions? Then we need a motion to set a public hearing for Monday, April 1, 2024 at 5 p.m. for the 24-25 proposed tax notice and direct the board secretary to publish the notice in compliance with Iowa code.
So moved.
Second.
Wise Wall. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
As far as policies go, we needed to defer this week's policies to the next meeting due to spring break, and always like for the directors who are over those policies to review and make suggested changes, and so we weren't able to do that last week. So we'll have double policies next week, but I know at least in the policies that were supposed to be for today, it should be pretty smooth sailing with most of those. We have 2 first readings coming back, 707.05R1 internal controls procedures, which Randy spoke to at the last meeting, and that is being recommended to be amended. There's been no changes since the last meeting, so I would recommend approval and waive the second reading.
Are there any questions? Then is there a motion to amend 707.05R1 and waive the second reading?
So moved. Second.
Faultus Stanley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
The second and final policy for tonight is 804.05, which is a new policy. This was a policy that was presented at the last meeting. It really kind of combined 2 previous policies that we had that Stacy Toole Crawford had crafted regarding stock emergency medication supply. We have not adjusted it since the last meeting, so I would recommend the board adopt and waive the second reading.
Are there any questions? Then we need a motion to adopt 804.05 and waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Wise Hernandez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Hey, on that, did we delete the old policies last time? Or did we keep them to delete them this time?
We kept them to delete them this
So those need to come back in April so we can delete those old ones that replaces.
Yep.
Looking at reminders, Leah, you've got at least some of the initial review policies for next meeting. Somebody else will have some as well, sounds like. Lenahan will be here to present at that April 1st meeting. And then there are committee meetings coming up as we head towards the end of the school year. And not on there, but remember tomorrow we've got a board work session at the Orpheum at 11.
11.
And I think everybody here should have been invited to participate in at least one other meeting of some sort tomorrow, getting started on Miller Middle School. So, committee reports. I know Acer met this morning.
Yes, we had a really good meeting this morning. I'll try to quickly summarize some of the key points that were shared. We had Jared Heil and Nan Benson representing the county. Similar to what Randy put forward to you, a lot of the discussion was about what was happening with tax rates, and that the county as well as the school district were lowering them. The city was keeping theirs stable, but based on a valuation increase, it'll be confusing to people because you say that they're going down, but the valuations increase and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they increase to a point where actually the taxes are higher. A lot of the discussion from Nan anyway was about further confusion with the tax documents, like what Randy shared today, where it shows like a 21% decrease at the bottom, but and then again, people are expecting a significant decrease potentially as a result of that. So sometimes it's hard to be fully transparent and do it in such a way that people understand the whole dynamics of things, especially depending on how some of these calculations are made. So there was a lot of talk about that. We did not have a city representative, but Heather Thomas had sent out an email that I spoke to a little bit relative to the disruption that will be created through further work on State Street, starting yesterday through this summer, where they redid the roads, but now they're redoing the sidewalks and the utilities and everything associated with the roads. So they're going to do incremental closures throughout the summer on State Street, and still planning tentatively to move forward on after State Street and moving towards the Main Street project next year. Carrie Teskey was there representing Central Rivers AA, and she talked a lot about some of the career-ready supports that right here in the service center, Media Services Center and Technology Center, that they have purchased and or made available to school districts. But we spent probably a preponderance of the time talking about the AA bill in terms of where it stands and what kind of impact that will have on districts in Marshall County, depending on what winds up going through. Nate Chua was in attendance from the community college. He talked about the International Women's Day panel that they're hosting on March 22nd. They also have an upcoming career expo for high school students. Not last week, but the previous week to 2 weeks, they interviewed 3 prospective finalists for the MCC provost position. They haven't made any announcements on that yet, but I would anticipate a decision will be made and or announcement will be made sometime within the next week or two. In addition to the provost position being open, also their Dean of Academic Affairs position is open as well. The person that currently has that position, Vincent Boyd, I think, is relocating to the St. Louis area, so that he'll be missed. And then they talked a little bit about, ironically, MCC doing biology and chemistry lab updates as well. I won't bother you with what I shared because you know all of that. John Hall was very energetic and enthusiastic about some of the economic development things that are happening or in the works to happen in Marshtown. He talked about a recent project which is now coming to fruition, which is a new business for CO2 refrigeration systems. Currently, there's 2 people employed, but once they have the facility in place, I think he said it's going to create 48 to 50 or so jobs. He also said there's good progress on the potential purchase of the Meadow Lane Mall, which includes the development of a recreation area and that play it again sports area, so that's super exciting. He said things are moving forward with trying to develop a 25-acre community solar project out in the industrial park. That a lot of interest from JBS, Emerson, and Lennox in that particular project. Amy Piper from Iowa State University Extension indicated that they took 2 of our high school students recently to a conference in Washington, D.C. She also mentioned that they've successfully acquired 2 AmeriCorps staff members who will be added to their team this summer to help provide programming, which they were pretty excited about. Zach Maxwell was there representing the waterworks, and he talked about a couple different projects. One is that they're upgrading meters to touchpad, so that they'll be able to digitally get those readings instead of knocking on doors or what have. And then he said things are moving forward on the future creation of an expanded treatment plant, which will provide 6 million more gallons of water, which is going to be extremely necessary with the potential expansion of industries in Marshalltown. So in addition to what the current or future needs are with existing businesses, but for attracting new businesses as well. So there's quite a bit shared. We ran a little bit over an hour.
They always do. So. Any other committees meet in the last couple of weeks? Okay. Okay. Well, what have we done this evening to improve education for the students in Marshalltown?
We got some vehicles.
We learned about how Miller really is trying to make sure that all their students are not falling through the cracks. And I think that's a great thing. Yes, it is a big deal. They're doing good things.
That was good to hear from, those 3 fifth graders with their What the Flag Means to Me essays.
Well, and in case anyone is interested, we do have the Rotary Speech Contest happening at the Orpheum at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We had 6 local applicants. I don't know that we'll have 6 actually show up, but we're hoping to have at least 4 more show up. We've got 3 state-level judges coming in to judge those because the Morristown kids usually fare really well in these competitions. We're hoping that maybe we'll have a potential regional and/or state champ out of the mix, but if you have nothing better to do outside of the meetings that you're going to for us and work and life in general, feel free to stop by. It shouldn't last longer than, I think the speeches are like 5 minutes max, so we'll probably be done by 7:30, 7:45 at the latest, I would imagine. Be in the mini theater.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll take about a 5-minute break and then we'll go into a closed session. So thank you, everybody.